My phone rang. Josh. My heart always skips a beat when my children call. Whether it's joy or trouble, a mother's heart never rests. I wiped my hands on a towel and answered. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice light, too casual. "Just wanted to check in. I'm out of town for a few days. Business trip, nothing major." I smiled, though something didn't sit right in my stomach. "Where to this time?" "Denver. Quick, no hesitation. Couple of meetings. Might even be back early if all goes well." I nodded. "That's good, sweetheart. You eating okay?" He chuckled. "Yes, Mom. I'm a grown man, remember?" "You'll always be my boy, Josh." I laughed, but inside, that strange feeling didn't go away. No questions about me, no questions about the house. Usually he'd mention the neighbor's roses or ask if the roof was still leaking, but not today. Today, he was brisk, eager to hang up. "Well, gotta run," he said suddenly. "We're about to start a meeting. Just wanted to check in. Love you." "Love you too." The words sat heavy on my tongue, and when the call ended, I just stood there, phone in hand, laundry forgotten. There was nothing obvious in what he said, nothing wrong, but a mother knows, even when her son is a grown man with graying hair, a job, and his own life, she knows. And that day, deep in my bones, I knew Josh was lying. "Drop your city below. We want to see how far this story has reached." I sat down, fingers tightening around my phone, staring at the faded family photos lining my walls. Josh's childhood had been filled with warmth, laughter, and sacrifice, my sacrifices. I remembered the scraped knees I had bandaged, the sleepless nights by his bedside when he'd had a fever. The way he clung to my leg, crying when I left for work, too young to understand that every shift I worked was for him. Then there were the good years, his high school graduation, the proud moment I watched him accept his first job offer. Josh was charming, always had been. Even as a kid, he could talk his way out of trouble with nothing but a grin. "Come on, Mom, you love me too much to be mad," he'd say, after breaking my favorite vase or skipping chores. And I had always forgiven him, always made excuses. Maybe that was my mistake, because somewhere along the way, my boy, the one I had loved unconditionally, had stopped loving me back. Josh had always been a dreamer, a boy with grand visions of wealth, success, and a life bigger than what we had. I remembered the way he used to sit at the kitchen table, flipping through glossy magazines of sports cars and mansions, saying, "One day, Mom, I'm gonna have it all." I had smiled back then, amused by his determination. "Just work hard, sweetheart. That's how you get there." But work wasn't what Josh wanted. Quick wins were. It started small. In college, he'd talk his way out of overdue assignments. Then came the risky business ventures, the investments in projects that never materialized, the loans he took but never repaid. I had bailed him out too many times. "Just this once, Mom. I swear it's the last time." It was never the last time. And yet, despite all his mistakes, I had never doubted that he loved me. That deep down, I still mattered. Until now. Because this time, he hadn't asked for help Friday at dawn. The house was still silver with mist when my phone jittered against the windowsill. Josh's name glowed. I slipped Daniel's flannel over my nightgown and answered. He exhaled jetway noise and announced he was boarding for Denver. I asked which client. He laughed, said something about venture capital and hustling, reminded me to water the roses. Before I could mention the roof leak, he ended the call. His cheer was lacquer, shiny, thin, hiding splinters. Coffee bubbled. I replayed every syllable in my head. He never asked about my arthritis, never teased about Mrs. Flynn's lemon cake. Suspicion perched on my shoulder like a crow. I shoved it away, grabbed the watering can, and stepped outside. The mailbox yawned with bills and one thick envelope from the county recorder. Property tax receipt marked paid in full, mailing address JW Real Estate Holdings, suite in a high-rise I'd never heard of. My stomach knotted. Inside, I opened the cedar file box, Daniel's tidy tabs for every paper that ever mattered. Birth certificates, mortgage paid letter, 2003 warranty deed. except the deed section gaped empty. Cold slid into my bones. I tipped the box upside down. Only dust motes drifted out. I rang Frank Delaney, our semi-retired lawyer. His gravel voice answered mid-sneeze. I apologized for the hour, told him the deed had vanished, taxes redirected, Josh allegedly in Denver. Frank hummed, promised to pull title history, and suggested tea with honey for my nerves. I thanked him and hung up feeling none better. Mid-morning, Mrs. Flynn waved from her porch. I crossed the street for small talk, but really to confirm a theory. She mentioned a black Audi parking outside my house Wednesday night, Josh's model. He had carried documents inside under a manila folder. My crow of suspicion cawed louder. Back home, I paced the hallway, fingers brushing the pencil marks of childhood growth spurts. Memories of teenage Josh forging excuse notes flooded back. The kid practiced my handwriting until the loop sang. Adult Josh had upgraded from ballpoint to laser printer. By noon, Frank called again, voice clipped. The county recorded a quitclaim deed Monday, transferring full title from Evelyn Walker, acting through durable power of attorney, to JW Real Estate Holdings. Effective immediately. I barked an incredulous what power of attorney. Frank rustled pages, read the instrument date, 8 years old, never revoked. I remembered minor surgery, giving Josh limited authority to pay utilities. Limited had apparently become limitless. Frank urged calm, said we could file an injunction Monday, but would need proof of fraud for criminal charges. I stared at Daniel's hammer hanging on the garage wall and answered that proof was hiding in this house. I could feel it. Afternoon light slanted when I marched to Josh's childhood room. The place still smelled of dusty trophies and abandoned ambition. I knelt by the desk, pried the loose plank he never noticed I'd nailed backward after finding cigarettes. Beneath lay his old baseball glove, a stick of gum fossilized inside, and a slender USB drive labeled POA scan. My pulse drummed in my ears. Laptop open, drive plugged, folders bloomed, scans of my signature on blank pages, high resolution, ready for drag and drop, PDF of the quitclaim deed bearing my forged flourish, correspondence with a brokerage boasting quick flip buyers, a spreadsheet projecting a 6-figure payout once the house closed. Rage fizzed like peroxide on a wound. I copied everything to the cloud. Then I called Josh, thumb hovering over speaker. He answered on the second ring, voice echoing as if inside a lounge. I kept mine syrup sweet, said the strangest envelope arrived, county paperwork I didn't understand, asked whether he could explain. He chuckled, claimed clerical errors happen, promised to review once he was back. I suggested we might split any accidental windfall. He fell for the bait, said he would land early Sunday and handle it personally. After the call, I forwarded the files to Frank and to Detective Lena Ruiz, Frank's niece in financial crimes. Ruiz replied within minutes. Evidence solid, chain of custody intact, but we needed Josh on record admitting intent. She proposed wiring the foyer lamp with a hidden camera before Sunday. I agreed, throat tight but steady. A white SUV rolled up, company logo silver key inspections on the door. 2 men in polos marched to my porch with clipboards, chatted about final walkthroughs. I stepped outside, asked their purpose. The taller one claimed bank-required inspection before escrow close. I told him no sale existed. He smirked, said paperwork proved otherwise, tried to shoulder past me. I planted myself in the doorway, voice iron, told them any entry without owner consent constituted trespass. They traded glances, muttered about miscommunication, retreated, but not before dropping a folder. Inside, a purchase agreement, my forged initials on every page, closing scheduled Monday morning. I watched their taillights vanish, folder clutched like a live grenade, and realized Josh wasn't just flipping my house. He was hours from finalizing the theft. Panic scratched at my ribs. I exhaled slow, buried it. There was still time, but only if every move hit like checkmate. I texted Ruiz the new documents, added a single line, game on. She replied within seconds, setting up Sunday dawn. Wear calm like armor. Night settled. I brewed chamomile, yet tasted metal. In Daniel's chair, I rehearsed tomorrow's script, every word a nail for the coffin of Josh's scheme. Outside, the crow on the fence cawed twice, then flew off into the dark. I decided that was an omen. Treachery takes wing, but mothers know the sky better. By dawn, the sky glowed sherbet pink against the gutters Daniel once patched with coffee cans. I dragged a folding ladder inside and, with Detective Lena Ruiz coaching by phone, tucked her button camera behind the frosted bulb of the foyer lamp. Ruiz instructed, "Tilt it 10 degrees left, the lens needs a clear shot of the threshold." I adjusted until she barked, "Perfect, Mrs. Walker, you just built yourself a witness." Frank arrived next carrying croissants and a thumb drive. He muttered that he spent half the night printing every forged page twice, one set for the injunction judge, one for the AG hotline. I poured him burnt diner coffee while we cross-checked signatures. My loops danced steady. The forgeries sagged like tired string. Frank grinned. A jury will spot that from the back row. At 9:30, Mrs. Flynn's grandson bicycled past, shouting that Channel 6 parked a van on Maple Street. Ruiz texted the same warning. Josh fed them a story naming you a confused senior. Be ready, cameras at 11. I pressed lipstick, smoothed Daniel's flannel into something resembling poise, then stepped onto the porch as the reporter strode up trailing a cameraman. She opened with a pitying tilt of the head, claiming sources said, "I intended to donate the house, but now resisted out of memory issues." I smiled all sugar and lowered the boom. I stated, "Sources lie. My mind is sharp enough to recall every nail my husband drove into these beams, including the nail your cameraman is leaning on." The cameraman jumped back, the reporter flushed. I invited them to view the true documents when my attorney authorized release. They retreated, van tires squealing. Inside, Ruiz laughed over Bluetooth. "You slapped them with a velvet glove. Nicely done." She said her team would arrive before dawn Sunday. Plain clothes, unmarked sedan. She instructed me to keep every light on, make the house look welcoming, bait in place. Afternoon crept by in thunderous quiet. I polished Daniel's service badge, a nervous ritual I hadn't done since his funeral. Mid-polish, the doorbell rang. A courier thrust an envelope, demanded signature. I scrawled, opened it, found an invitation, open house champagne preview, Sunday 1 p.m., my own address printed beneath gilt grapes. Rage blazed so bright I tasted copper. He had scheduled the marketing fete before even closing escrow. Frank hissed through clenched teeth, asked whether I still wanted restraint or preferred scorched earth. I answered that scorched earth ruins roses. We stay the course. Near sunset, Sarah phoned after her nursing shift. Her voice quivered, asking if gossip about Grandma's selling was true. I steadied her fears, revealed Josh's forgery, begged secrecy until morning. She gasped. He always had silver-tongued tendencies, but never this. She swore to drive over for moral backup. I told her no. One walker in the blast zone was enough. At 8, the porch camera pinged, a shadow at the hedge. I killed living room lights, peered through linen. Josh's Audi idled under the street lamp, engine ticking. He stepped out, phone glued to ear, pacing tight circles. I cracked the window. Wind carried fragments, escrow, early keys, seller unstable. My own son disguised me as risk to hurry the buyer's wire. He pocketed the phone, strode to the front steps, produced a second key, my stolen spare. The deadbolt chunked open. He took one step inside before noticing the foyer lamp glowing brighter than usual. I greeted him from the hallway with a calm I borrowed from deeper places. I said, "You're home early, dear. Business must be booming." He jumped, fumbled excuses about checking furnace filters. I motioned to the kitchen. "Coffee?" He declined, eyes scanning for cameras he hadn't yet imagined. I asked why a sign reading "sold" sat on my grass. He laughed thinly, claimed a clerical mix-up. I replied that clerks rarely dig stakes. Then I dropped the anvil. I told him an injunction would freeze the title at 9 a.m. Detectives already possessed his forged PDFs. Every word he spoke now beamed to cloud storage. His face drained. Pupils flicked toward the foyer bulb. Too late understanding. He stammered, "This is family. We don't drag family to court." I marched closer, voice low steel. Family doesn't gut legacy for cash. A BMW rolled up bearing a suited couple clutching sparkling cider. The early bird buyers. Josh whispered a curse and darted outside, waving jazzy salesman arms, begging them to reschedule. I followed, introduced myself as the actual owner, informed them the listing was fraudulent, and the police welcomed their testimony. The wife glared at Josh, hissed that her deposit better return by Monday, or she'd sue him into dust. They screeched away, leaving him bathed in porch light, exposed. Josh rounded on me, voice cracking into that teenage register I once soothed after nightmares. He growled, "Why can't you just let go of this ancient wooden tomb?" I answered, "Because this tomb raised you and your sister, and I'll be buried here before a vulture flips it." He lunged toward the door, maybe to rip the lamp out. I sidestepped, let him slam empty fists against oak, then calmly engaged the chain on my side. I told him Ruiz expected his arrival and recommended he show tomorrow at dawn, preferably with counsel. He spat under his breath, stomped to his Audi, tires shrieking into night. I locked every bolt, exhaled shakily, then laughed harder than I had in years. Not because anything was funny, but because adrenaline demanded tribute. I texted Ruiz. Fish surfaced, thrashed, returned to pond, hook intact. She replied with a single word, "Excellent." Past midnight, I sat with Daniel's hammer across my lap like a scepter, lamp still blazing, camera still blinking. The house creaked, but did not cower. Tomorrow the law would walk through my still unsold doorway. And tomorrow my son would learn what happens when a mother who built walls from love decides to wield them as armor. I woke at 4:45 a.m. to the rasp of sleet on the kitchen window and the low hum of Ruiz's unmarked sedan rolling to the curb. She and two plainclothes techs unloaded gear, the way stagehands prep a set. Silent, precise, already knowing where each light switch and squeaky board lived. I offered coffee. Ruiz declined, said adrenaline kept her warmer than caffeine. By 5:30, the Foyer camera streamed to a laptop on my dining table. A second pinhole unit hid in the mantel clock. A third peeked through the door peephole. Every feed timestamped, audio live. Ruiz briefed me on the plan. Josh would be wearing a wire without knowing it. My job was to keep him talking long enough to admit intent to defraud. She reminded me, keep verbs active, emotions steady. I replied I had taught high school English for 31 years. Verbs and patience were my specialties. At 6:12, headlights scraped the wet pavement. Josh's Audi idled, exhaust pluming. He sat a full minute, probably rehearsing charm, then killed the engine. Ruiz signaled the tech to start master record. I opened the door before he could knock. I greeted him with a calm good morning and added that the roses needed pruning after last night's frost. He blinked at the unexpected normalcy, stepped inside, and shut the door behind him. His gaze flicked to the foyer lamp, but he masked the recognition with a too big smile. He asked if we could talk privately. I led him to the dining room where Ruiz's laptop lay closed, disguised as one of Sarah's cookbooks. Josh complimented the smell of fresh bread to buy time. I ignored the bait and slid my phone, recording, onto the table. I explained that paperwork for a sale, bearing my forged signature, now circulated online. I demanded to know why my deed sat in escrow. He tried the filial concern angle, claiming he worried about my health in a big drafty house. I countered that forging documents was an odd form of caretaking. He shifted tactics, pitched quick-turn profits, said downsizing would bankroll my retirement. I asked whether that justified lying to buyers. His laugh cracked. He assured me no one would get hurt and insisted the deal must close today, or hard money lenders would eat him alive. That sentence was Ruiz's green flag. She and her techs entered through the back hall as quietly as fog. Josh flinched when Ruiz announced her badge, then attempted bluster, calling the gathering an ambush. Ruiz read the recording consent statute aloud and added that my foyer lamp had captured the entire confession. Josh's cheeks blanched chalk white. Phone buzzed. He answered without thinking. The speaker carried an impatient male voice demanding wire confirmation before releasing funds. Josh muttered that a delay occurred, but the deed was solid. Ruiz stepped closer, informed the caller he was speaking with Detective Ruiz, financial crimes. The line disconnected in a burst of curses. Josh's composure shattered. He lunged for the mantel clock, likely guessing the camera location from its odd angle. I moved faster, planting Daniel's old hammer on the table with a thunder crack. The shock stopped him mid-step. I said I built this home alongside a man who shaped steel for a living, and I wasn't above swinging a reminder now. He wilted back into the chair. Ruiz recited Miranda rights, while the tech mirrored Josh's phone, pulling cached emails that matched the forged PDFs on our drive. Each file populated the laptop display, evidence blooming like ulcers on his future. Josh tried pity next, whispering that prison would ruin him, that he only wanted to fix everything and make me proud. I kept my voice level, told him pride grows in honest soil, and he had salted the earth himself. Ruiz asked if he wished to provide a formal statement. He shook his head, jaw tight, then surprised everyone by turning to me. He said I never let him breathe, never trusted his ambition, always worshipped a pile of lumber more than his potential. I answered that potential without good character was an unloaded gun, harmless until someone grabbed greed as the bullet. Officers escorted him outside, just as the grey sky cracked open into sleet again. Reporters sprinted from their vans, cameras rolling. Josh attempted a final performance, shouting that his senile mother had orchestrated a sting out of spite. Ruiz answered on record that digital forensics disproved every word. The press pivoted toward me. I held up the rose pruning shears I'd tucked into my coat pocket. I told them a mother trims diseased branches so the rest of the garden can thrive, and today was pruning day. Back inside, Ruiz sighed relief, powered down the feeds, and printed the chain of custody receipts. I thanked her, voice shaking only after the door closed behind them. Silence settled, broken only by the antique clock, now slightly askew but valiantly ticking. I righted it, then pulled Daniel's flannel tighter. The house smelled of wet wool and hot circuits. Evidence bags sat on the kitchen counter, waiting for a court date I no longer feared. I poured myself a single measure of his favorite bourbon, toasted the empty chair across from me, and swallowed the burn. The scam had collapsed under its own hubris. The home still stood. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, headlines, maybe pitying casseroles from neighbors. Tonight I let the quiet wrap around me like insulation. Sleety wind rattled the gutters, but the beams Daniel set 35 years ago did not flinch. Neither did I. The next morning, a pewter sky sagged over downtown, matching the stone facade of Madison County Court. Ruiz parked beside the press barricade. Flashes strobed against the windshield like silent lightning. I tightened the belt on Daniel's dark wool coat, the one he wore to our daughter's graduation. Armor in fabric form. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed above rows of wary faces. Tenants Josh had scammed, neighbors craving spectacle, a columnist for the Chronicle already drafting spin. I felt every eye tugging at the fibers of my resolve, but I kept my shoulders squared. Today was only arraignment, yet rumor had already inflated it into a full-scale trial. The bailiff announced the docket. Josh shuffled in, wrists cuffed, county orange dulling his complexion. He spotted me, attempted a smirk that never reached his eyes. Behind him, his attorney, a slick man named Halbrook, who smelled of cedar and ego, whispered strategy. Josh nodded, chin jerking like a marionette with frayed strings. Judge Whittaker entered, robe sweeping the floor. She read the charges: deed fraud, wire fraud, elder exploitation, attempted grand larceny. Halbrook pled not guilty on Josh's behalf and moved for immediate bail, citing first-time offense and community ties. Ruiz, standing beside the prosecutor, countered with the hidden camera footage, the forged power of attorney scans, and the overnight statements from 3 nearly defrauded buyers. Whittaker's gaze slid to me. She asked whether I wished to address risk of flight. I inhaled the paper dust air and spoke without quotation marks, just firm verbs. I explained that my son fabricated a cruise to scheme uninterrupted, redirected my mail, staged an open house party, and instructed buyers to treat me as unstable if I appeared. I stated bluntly that a man willing to erase his mother's identity would not hesitate to vanish across state lines once bail cleared. The courtroom hummed with collective intake of breath. Halbrook objected, claiming prejudice. Judge Whittaker sustained the facts, overruled his bail request, and set a competency review instead. Josh jerked to his feet, wrists clanging. He accused me of poisoning the judge, shouted that the rotting house had warped my brain. Halbrook barked at him to sit. 2 deputies restrained him. His voice cracked, splattering the gallery with half-formed curses before the gavel cracked harder. Judge Whittaker ordered a recess, deputies escorting Josh to a holding cell. Cameras pivoted toward me the second the bench cleared. Reporters shoved microphones. One asked if I feared my son would retaliate after conviction. I answered in verbs, not quotes. I reminded them that truth retaliates harder than any man. Today, the truth carried chain links. In the hallway, Sarah materialized, breathless from a 90-minute drive after her ICU shift. She clasped my hands, whispering that Josh looked hollow, stranger empty. I told her grief could wait, vigilance could not. We reviewed the next steps. Injunction already freezing assets, civil suit stacking for restitution, district attorney scheduling grand jury testimony within 10 days. Sarah nodded, though exhaustion painted shadows under her eyes. She promised to alert the rest of the family chat, no leaks to tabloids. Frank arrived with 2 banker's boxes. He murmured that forensic accountants unearthed a second escrow funnel, Blue Harbor Capital, holding Josh's deposit money, plus a bridge loan drawn against future inheritance. My pulse hammered. Frank suggested filing a temporary restraining order on that account before lunch. We walked to the clerk's window, parchment crisp between our fingers. Back in the courtroom, deputies led Josh in again. Shackles remained. Judge Whittaker reconvened. Prosecutor Mason introduced new evidence. The Blue Harbor ledger, plus an email where Josh instructed an associate to liquidate after closing. Phrase reading, "We dumped the old bat into assisted living." Gasps popped like corn. Halbrook rubbed his temples, asked for continuance, which Whittaker denied. Josh's posture crumpled. He stared at the floor, no longer challenging. I watched panic replace arrogance, saw the boy I once bandaged after BMX crashes flicker behind the man spiraling down. For a heartbeat, pity brushed my heart. Then I recalled the sold sign. Court adjourned until the competency review. Deputies marched Josh past me. He muttered that I ruined everything. I replied with even cadence that I had salvaged what mattered, memory, dignity, walls still standing, and that he could reclaim his own life only by admitting the wreckage he'd wrought. He jerked away, chains rattling. Outside, icy drizzle fell. Reporters clamored again, but Ruiz formed a human wedge, guiding me and Sarah to the sedan. From behind the barricade, an elderly man I didn't recognize raised a cardboard sign reading, "Thank you for fighting for us." Tears blurred the letters. Sarah squeezed my arm. At Frank's office, we notarized the asset freeze. He predicted plea negotiations would surface, now that Josh saw the depth of evidence. I nodded, but focused on the larger ledger, my own account of resilience, accruing compound interest every hour I refused to panic. Evening settled. Sarah dozed in the guest room, while I stitched new curtains for the dining room window, ruined by the staging photos. Each pull of thread felt like binding a wound closed. News at 10 replayed Josh's hallway outburst. Commentators called it the unraveling of a real estate wunderkind. I turned off the television. Labels no longer mattered. Sometime near midnight, my phone vibrated, a collect call from county jail. I let it ring twice, palm sweating. Then I pressed decline. Dialogue could resume when accountability joined the conversation. Until then, silence would speak louder than forgiveness. I locked every bolt, switched off the foyer lamp, and climbed the stairs. Rain drummed the roof Daniel built. The house answered with settled timber and unapologetic strength. Tonight it sheltered a woman who had learned the sharpest tool in her toolbox was steadfast verbs. I shut my bedroom door, not with panic, but with purpose. The calendar slid forward 3 tense weeks before jury selection began, yet the courthouse lobby still smelled of my first visit: toner, disinfectant, and human nerves. I walked past a row of brass plaques listing donors. JW Real Estate Holdings no longer glowed among them. Some clerk had pried the letters off after the indictment. That petty erasure felt like foreshadowing. Inside Division B, 12 jurors settled behind the rail. The prosecutor, Mason, outlined the state's case with the steadiness of a carpenter: forged power of attorney, falsified quitclaim, money laundering through Blue Harbor Capital, 3 counts of elder exploitation. He promised signatures, wire logs, and hidden camera admissions. Every word shifted the juror's posture closer to grim. Halbrook rose for the defense, smoothing his tie as though it were proof of credibility. He insisted that Josh acted out of benevolent concern, that I was overwhelmed by property upkeep, that the sale would have secured my retirement. He described the hidden camera as entrapment and dismissed the forged documents as clerical errors. His verbs puffed like hot air. None reached the ceiling. Mason called Detective Ruiz first. She testified that digital forensics traced Josh's IP address to every fraudulent file. She presented metadata screens. Timestamps glowed under courtroom lights like radioactive truth. Halbrook tried to suggest Ruiz mishandled the chain of custody. She answered that every byte sat inside read-only partitions logged to blockchain. Her calm verbs whittled his objection into splinters. When Mason introduced the Foyer lamp video, the bailiff rolled a monitor forward, dimmed lights. The jury watched Josh tell me we dumped the old bat into assisted living. Gasps escaped 2 jurors, one clutching her sweater. Halbrook objected that the statement was hyperbole. Judge Whitaker overruled, reminding him that intent did not depend on courtesy. For cross-examination, Halbrook gambled on pathos. He called Josh to the stand against whispered advice from his paralegal. Josh straightened, shackles hidden beneath the rail, and began a polished monologue. He claimed he only forged because the market window was microscopic, that I had once joked about falling behind on taxes, that he feared I would lose everything if he did not act. He peppered the speech with childhood memories, baseball games, my homemade pie, as though sentiment could rewrite law. Mason rose, voice low and lethal. He asked why charity required a shell company and a bridge loan titled Inheritance Capture. Josh stuttered, insisted those were placeholder labels. Mason asked why charity involved instructing inspectors to ignore the owner if she appeared. Josh's answers wilted into half phrases. Mason finally displayed the ledger, where Josh earmarked 40% of proceeds for personal crypto investments. That line item hurt more than any insult. Halbrook attempted redirect, prompting Josh to describe me as forgetful and emotionally volatile. I sat stone still, letting the accusation ricochet harmlessly. Mason objected and presented my recent cognitive assessment, part of my nursing license renewal, scoring high in every category. Josh's credibility folded like wet cardboard. The defense then called Dr. Lyons, a glossy expert in geriatric psychology, to argue diminished capacity. Lyons described generic senior anxiety, waved at statistics about memory lapses. Mason requested specific evaluations of me. Lyons admitted he had never met me. Whitaker sustained Mason's motion to strike half the testimony. Halbrook's shoulders slumped. On day 3, I took the stand. Mason guided me through the history of the house, the missing deed, the inspection folder dropped by mistake. I narrated without tears, verbs direct. I opened, I discovered, I forwarded, I revoked. Halbrook cross-examined gently at first, then pushed. He suggested I misremembered granting Josh verbal permission. I answered that my memory holds the smell of cedar beams from 1987. It certainly holds the absence of any such permission. A juror nodded, empathy etched across her brow. Mason introduced the surprise witness, Ava Barlow, escrow officer from Blue Harbor. She appeared nervous yet determined. She testified that Josh instructed her to close the deal fast before the old woman wised up. Halbrook objected on hearsay. Barlow produced an email chain with Josh's directives. The jury leaned forward collectively, gravity pulling on verdicts not yet spoken. Closing arguments arrived on day 4. Mason reminded jurors that love does not require fraud, that guardianship never wears a ski mask, and that every document in evidence carried Josh's digital fingerprints. Halbrook pleaded for context, describing economic stress, claiming misguided love rather than criminal intent. His verbs tried to soften edges, already honed razor sharp. Deliberation took 2 hours, long enough for press coffee to go stale. When jurors returned, the forewoman's hands trembled, but her voice rang clear. Guilty on all counts. Josh's eyes widened blank, as if he finally glimpsed a future without loopholes. Halbrook exhaled defeat. Mason relaxed shoulders stiff from 4 days of precision. Judge Whittaker ordered remand pending sentencing and denied appeal bond. She set restitution at provisional $850,000, every penny traced through Blue Harbor, plus asset seizure of JW Holdings. Josh's knees buckled. Deputies steadied him. He turned toward me once, mouth shaping a plea, but the bailiff guided him through the side door before sound emerged. Reporters swarmed the steps. I stated that justice speaks in verbs, not excuses, and that today it spoke clearly. Cameras flashed, capturing not triumph but tempered relief. Behind me, the courthouse bell tolled 5 slow notes, each echoed like a nail sealing a chapter. Sarah met me at the sidewalk, eyes red yet proud. She whispered that the garden back home had sprouted first crocuses of spring. I pictured purple petals pushing through thawed earth, evidence that roots, once deep enough, survive any frost. We walked to Frank's sedan, sleet melting into fine rain, my coat heavy but my spine lighter than it had been in months. Sentencing morning dawns pewter grey. I walk through the courthouse metal detector while reporters chant my name like gulls hungry for crumbs. Sarah squeezes my hand. Detective Ruiz flanks my other side, murmuring that the press will quiet once the gavel drops. I steady my breath, feel Daniel's old wool coat sit on my shoulders like moral armor. In courtroom 2, the air crackles, every seat taken by scam victims, neighbors, and a dozen bloggers sniffing clickbait. Josh shuffles in, wrists cuffed, county orange sagging on a frame suddenly smaller. His eyes sweep the gallery, land on me, beg silently. I hold them, refuse to blink. Compassion lives in me, but it knows today is not its turn at the mic. Judge Whittaker opens the docket, recites each conviction: deed fraud, wire fraud, elder exploitation, money laundering. Prosecutor Mason stands and invites final victim statements. A single mother explains that Josh's fake lease forced her and 2 toddlers to live in a motel. An elderly veteran describes pawning his wedding band after losing his deposit. Their words land like gravel in still water, small splashes, widening rings of consequence. Whittaker nods toward me. I rise, palms flat on the rail. I tell the court I built, I trusted, I discovered, I protected. I say verbs matter more than adjectives. He lied, he forged, he profited. I end by insisting that restitution without repentance is a hollow nail. It never holds lumber. Pins drop quieter than the hush that follows. Halbrook, polished as ever, claims Josh acted from misplaced love, that prison will crush an entrepreneurial spirit merely looking after his aging mother. He requests leniency, rehab, community service, anything but bars. Mason counters that love never requires a forged signature. Whittaker listens, face granite. She asks Josh if he wishes to speak. He clears his throat, voice cracked marble. He claims I ignored roof leaks, that the house sucked money we didn't have, that he only meant to secure my twilight years. I answer from the rail, voice calm, verbs cutting, that twilight should be lit by sunsets, not arson. A juror bites her lip, another nods. The clerk prepares the restitution check, $852,000 seized from Blue Harbor. She hands it across the rail toward me. Josh's chains jangle. He lunges. Deputies scramble, benches screech. He stretches cuffed hands, barking that the money is his seed capital, that I am senile, that I ruined everything. I pivot, clutch the check against my chest. A deputy grabs his elbow, another locks ankles. The audience gasps. Flashbulbs strobe. Judge Whittaker slams the gavel once, wood on wood like thunder in a canyon. Josh freezes mid-lurch, eyes wide, breathing ragged. He growls that no cell can stop him rebuilding, that he will sue us all. I answer, he first must rebuild character. Whittaker lifts her sentencing sheet. She clears her throat. The gallery leans forward as though pulled by a single string. Sarah's fingernails dig crescents into my palm. Ruiz's hand hovers near her holster, though the danger has passed. Whittaker inhales to speak the number. Years, fines, restitution, fate. Josh hangs between deputies, sweat beading, lips twitching. Cameras flash again. The courthouse seems to hold its breath with us. The judge begins. I sentence you,